Hey, Steve Stine here, and what I'd like to talk to you about now is the importance of understanding that blues is such an awesome style of music, but we tend to forget that when we play blues or when we write blues songs, they don't have to just be 12-bar blues, right? We can do all kinds of cool things. So, for instance, what I've got here is a little riff that I wrote, just very straightforward, and it's using a 1 chord, and it's using a 4 chord, and it's using a 5 chord, and a couple other things in between. But what I'm doing right now is I'm using my bootlegger guitar here. Okay, and what I did was I tuned it to drop tuning. So I took the 6th string, and instead of being an E, I tuned the 6th string down to D. And that's kind of a cool thing to do because it's very reminiscent of what people would do when they would play slide guitar. A lot of old blues guys would play slide guitar with open tunings, they called it. Well, I'm not tuned completely open. I'm just tuned with the 6th string down to D, which enables my guitar to be able to be played like this. So I've got a plain old D chord here, but I've got that 6th string tuned to D, so I can strum all 6 strings and get this D sound. So what I did was I just created a riff out of the first chord. Now, my first chord is this, which is a D chord, okay? It's D. That's what it's to is open D. So if you think about it, normally you'd play E like this. So if I moved it down a whole step yet, I'd wind up in D. So the string is tuned to D, so the first chord is D. Now, if I'm thinking about a 1-4-5 in the key of D, you could either use some theory or you could use just your knowledge of your fretboard and go, okay, well, if I'm in D, my 1 chord is D, my 4 chord would be G, and my 5 chord would be A, however you find the answer. So I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to use a G and an A in here as well. Just to give it more of a bluesy feel, I'm going to use that 1-4-5. So I've got my D here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my G chord. Now, G would normally be played right here. Now, I'm in drop tuning, though, which means that this 6th string is tuned 2 frets lower than normal. So in order to compensate, what I'm going to do is move that finger up 2 frets, okay, which means I wind up with a straight line. So this is a G. So D, 1, 4, and then 5 would be here. See? So you can hear the 1-4-5 happening. Now what I did was I just created a riff out of this where I'm not focused on 12-bar blues. I'm not focused on switching back between the 1 and the 4 and the 5 in that traditional sense. I'm just creating a bluesy sound. So I'm playing these 1-4-5 chords, but I'm giving it more of a, if you want to call it a rock and roll sound, but it certainly has a blues element to it. So that's all I'm doing right there. I love to play in drop D. I love to play in standard tuning too, but I love to play in drop D because I come up with different kinds of ideas than I normally would if I was playing in standard tuning. So what I've got here is this. So I'm playing 3-5-3-0, and you'll notice because of the drop tuning, it accommodates using 1 finger to play your chords. And then I'm just doing a slide from C to D to make it sound a little more interesting. Okay? And then I'm just adding in some rhythm. And again, you could literally make up anything. So that's what I'm doing. And then I'm moving back to the C chord and strumming that twice. Now that has nothing to do with blues or 1-4-5 or anything like that. It's just something else, something kind of cool to play. And then I'm going to do this. So it's very similar to the... You see? So that's all I'm doing. So if you think about it, I'm doing the same pattern twice, just on different strings. So I've got this... That's the first part, and then I've got this, and then, so very similar. And then I just tag my intro. And that's my main riff. Now what I did was I used a... Okay, I went from... went up here to the let's see. So I went up here to the 5 chord. Okay, but then to make it a little less bluesy and just a little more blues rock and roll, then I went back to the C. And actually went to it as a C7. Okay, so I'm using the 4 chord, excuse me, in my riff. Right, so I'm using it all over inside that main riff, the 1 chord, the D chord, and then I'm using this G in there as well. And then at the end, I just tag it with a 5 chord, which is the A, or C7. I actually use both of those in the recording. I use a C and a C7, but that's what I'm doing. That's all. So again, what's really cool about this then is you're giving yourself a different rhythm, a different vibe, a different tempo, different groove, all these different kinds of things than just the 12-bar blues. There's nothing wrong with the 12-bar blues. I love the 12-bar blues. But this is just giving you another opportunity to do something a little different is all. Okay? So, and then when it comes time to do your soloing, you're in D. So you're just doing all the stuff you normally like to do. However you like to play, but now you're playing in D. So the only thing I do is at the end then, when that C chord comes up, I go from here, doing whatever I like, and when that C chord comes up, I go to the 11th fret of the 2nd string, and I bend it because I'm actually bending to a note that fits over the top of that chord. Okay, so it sounds kind of cool over that C. And then I just end it with a D bend. And that's it. So there's no real planning on it. I'm just enjoying myself, having some fun. But what I would like to see you do is mess around a little bit and see what kinds of things that you can come up with writing riffs. You know, play the blues, play 12-bar blues, all those kinds of things, but explore some other ideas, right? Now, right now, again, I showed you how I'm in drop D. Well, I'm going to go back up now. Okay, so now I'm in E, just back to normal, right? So let's say instead of just doing a... kind of bluesy thing, what I want to do is make up something that's a little more, again, it's blues based, but it's a little more rock and roll. So what I would do is come up with something maybe where I'm playing in E, and I'm going to do something like this. I could do the same thing over the 4 chord, which is the A. You see, that sort of thing. But when the 5 chord comes up, which is the B in this case, again, maybe I don't want it to be so bluesy, so I go to that B. Maybe I go to something else. So watch this. If I go... I'll probably do that a few times while the singer's singing. Now, here it comes. So instead of going to the 5 chord, the B... I went to C first, which made it sound a little deceptive. Which could be really cool. Or maybe you don't go to the 5 at all. Maybe you go C, D, and then you're back again. So again, you're giving it this really cool bluesy sound, this bluesy feel, but not feeling like you're tethered to the 12-bar blues per se. This for me is where just a ton of bands lie, whether it's ZZ Top or Stevie Ray Vaughan or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin or on and on and on. I mean, we could name a million different bands that have bluesy elements. Joe Bonamassa, right? Could be anybody. John Mayer, where some songs are 12-bar blues, no doubt about it. But then there's these other songs that aren't, that give you this really cool kind of sound. And it's just really fun to sit around and make some things up and have some fun and not always feel like you have to play the same thing over and over and over. One chord, and then you go to your 4, and then you go back to your 1. Make up something cool and post it and let me see it. Let me see what you come up with and what kinds of cool things that you're doing. So you've got some time here. Obviously, there's no rush in this, but have some fun. If at the very least you've got some sort of mobile device or something that can give you a drum beat that you can mess around with, that's always really fun. Or you can just think, just get a beat in your head and just start thinking about that a little bit. Dun, 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 dun. There's just all kinds of really neat things that you could make up. Just cool, really cool. And you got a boom, ba, da, boom, boom, ba. Really slow beat that you could be playing over and different stuff like that. So don't worry about always trying to make things way too complex. Just have some fun with it and see where you can go with it. And again, it gives you a lot of really neat things then when you go to solo over this. Whatever that might be, You can have some fun going all over the place and not just going, well, I got to go to a 1 right away. What I find, that kind of actually reminded me a little bit of Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin, where a lot of times what I think is really cool is when somebody's playing a riff like that and your brain goes, oh, the 4 chord is coming, but then it doesn't. It just keeps going. It just keeps that static thing going. And where you anticipate there should have been a 4 chord like there traditionally would be, there's no change at all. It just keeps doing that same thing over and over and over. I think that stuff is really, really cool. So it's a great thing for you to try and practice to get your own chops together, but certainly from a songwriting perspective, write in the realm that you're comfortable with, but just do some different things and have some fun with it. It's really important. So take care, practice hard. Remember, have some fun here. That's the most important thing. There's no reason why you shouldn't be writing songs and having some fun and getting your music out there just like anybody else does, right? You just got to stop thinking that it's so difficult, and also learn how you can take something so small like what we're doing right now and just tweak it a little bit and make it into something completely new and fresh.